Well, hey there, writer. Welcome to the Resilient Writers Radio Show. I'm your host, Rhonda Douglas, and this is the podcast for writers who want to create and sustain a writing life they love. Because, let's face it, the writing life has its ups and downs, and we want to not just write, but also to be able to enjoy the process, so that we'll spend more time with our butt in chair getting those words on the page. This podcast is for writers who love books and everything that goes into the making of them. For writers who want to learn and grow in their craft and improve their writing skills. Writers who want to finish their books and get them out into the world so their ideal readers can enjoy them. Writers who want to spend more time in that flow state. Writers who want to connect with other writers to celebrate and be in community in this crazy roller coaster ride we call the writing life. We are resilient writers. We're writing for the rest of our lives, and we're having a good time doing it. So welcome, writer. I'm so glad you're here. Let's jump right into today's show. Hey there, writer. Welcome back to another episode of the Resilient Writers Radio Show. Today, I'm talking with Kasia Van Schaik. She is the author of the linked story collection, We Have Never Lived on Earth, which was longlisted for the Scotiabank Giller Prize. Her writing has appeared in Electric Literature, the LA Review of Books, Best Canadian Poetry, and on the CBC. She holds a PhD in English Literature from McGill University. She lives in Montreal. And we are talking today about her memoir. It is kind of a memoir, right? It's sort of that like creative nonfiction memoir, Women Among Monuments, Solitude, Permission, and the Pursuit of Female Genius. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here. And I agree with you. Yes, it's a kind of mix of a lot of things, but yeah, hybrid memoir and book of cultural criticism. Yes.
Okay, love that. So what's the origin story for the book? Like, what made you decide, okay, this is definitely the book I'm writing?
Well, I feel like there's a few different origin stories. One would be just, ever since girlhood, found myself asking these questions. Where are the women among monuments? Why aren't there more of them? Being very interested in the kind of histories of female artists and writers, female genius, the Bronte sisters,
yes,
Mary Shelley, everything like that. So that's kind of, and Virginia Woolf, the questions from a room of one's own, obviously percolating for a long time. But then there were, in more recent years, two specific moments. And one was in, I think it was 2018, I published an essay with Electric Literature about basically about female solitude and reading, and proposing this idea that reading for many women is a kind of radical act, because it's sort of retreat from social obligations and care work and all these things, and it's taking that time, and so it can be seen as this kind of radical act. And so that essay got a lot of buzz. It kind of had a little viral moment, I guess, and I had a lot of people write. I had a lot of people write to me from all over the world to say how much it had touched them. And so I thought, I have to, when I have some time, I need to kind of continue pursuing this thread. I was working on my PhD at the time, so I did not have a lot of time, and working on writing fiction as well. But then in 2022, wrapped up my PhD, and the second kind of origin story, or the second moment of sort of that enlightenment, I guess, is when I read an article in 2022 about the first woman in the world to earn a PhD, who's Elena Piscopia. She earned that in 1678 in Padua, Italy.
Oh, yes, and Padua. Yeah.
Yes, Padua. So
the only place in the world.
So there was this debate, contemporary debate happening in Padua. Two city councillors had proposed to put a statue of Elena Piscopia in the town square, which is this enormous square that's filled with statues of male geniuses like Galileo and Petrarch, but only male statues. Right. They proposed to put a statue of Piscopia in the square, and it was they were hit with a huge backlash. Basically, everybody refusing this.
What?
Yes. In 2022. Oh so I thought, why is this such a resistance to recognizing women's achievements? And still now. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the name of the book, Women Among Monuments, actually comes from a quote from one of the city councillors saying, we've raised the debate about women among monuments, and it's very clear we need a very good statue of a woman in a very good place. I think the quote goes. Right. And so I took that and allowed that to be my entrance into talking about not just female genius as it's being recognized or not recognized in past centuries, but to think about what it means to sustain a creative life and to actually make space for that kind of genius to come in, right? Or right. To create anything, right? Yes. Which obviously women have had. There's been a great double standard, and women have had a harder time making that space. So then the book becomes, and I love that your audience are writers and largely women trying to live that creative life, because this book is very much for those artists.
Yeah. So, it's really interesting because I work with writers trying to finish a first book. And sometimes I do get this idea that it is selfish to, focus on my own creative dreams. Instead of focusing on, what my family needs. I had a woman say to me once, I was going to write last week, but my husband had a really busy week at work. And I was like, I don't see how those two things relate to each other. So, so help me understand what's going on. What are the barriers that most women face when it comes to trying to achieve their creative dreams?
So that's a great question. And I think that little anecdote that you gave us there is just such a common one. It's one I've heard so many times and have experienced myself. In the book, actually, I talk about, I was living in Berlin in my 20s, and I was hired as a kind of childminder for a woman who was trying to write. And she had such guilt about it.
Really?
And
okay.
Yeah, such guilt about it. And so she had me look after her kids, and she would lock her door to try and write. And obviously these were expensive hours because she was paying me, right? And so something had to be produced in those hours. And I think that pressure was a lot for her. And when she finally would come out of the room, and her children would be, climbing up her, and she would tell me like, oh, she didn't really get much done. And she was very guilty. I think she was very aware that, the pressure of right now, because someone else is taking care of your kids. So that seems to be something that weighs very heavily on women or the people in a relationship who have, historically had more of the responsibilities for care work, right. For emotional labor, etc. And so a lot of the writers I look at in the book, actually, too, like the Indigenous writer Leslie Marmon Silko also talks about this, like how difficult it was to kind of put aside the cares of the housework and motherhood, etc., in order to make space, like not just the physical space, but the mental space, and give yourself permission to say, for the next 5 hours, I'm just going to be an art monster, which is a term meaning like those who put their art above everything else. And I think that's just so complicated and difficult to do when you've been socialized to be the caretaker.
Yes. It reminds me of a novel have you read the novel by Nancy Houston, Slow Emergencies? It's basically about how a woman who's given herself over to her dream of dancing ruins her children.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. It's not just life, it's also literature. Great. We can't escape this no matter where we go.
I'll look that up. I loved Plain Songs, so I'll look that up.
Yeah. So, Tell me a little about the artists that you and the female geniuses that you um, discuss or explore in the book. Did you have a favorite?
Ooh, a favorite. They're also different, and I think about there's sort of different angles and different paths towards genius. And so, for example, there's Gertrude Stein. I look at in an early chapter of the book,
Mm-hmm.
and Gertrude Stein is a really interesting person because she claimed the mantle of genius. She said in her writing, she said, "Me and Pablo Picasso, and we're the same. We're geniuses." And
I love
which
that for her. I love that
I
for her.
know, I love that for her as well. And I was reading it at first, I'm like, oh my God, she calls herself a genius right there on the page. And then I thought, like, well, more, she's just sort of she's just sort of claiming that title and also everything that goes along with it. And I actually really respect her for that. Like that's, especially doing that in the early 20th century, like
Yeah.
go for it. And so she's a very complicated character, but I did enjoy researching and reading Gertrude Stein. I talk a little bit about Toni Morrison, who was a mother and editor working full time, waking up really, really early in the morning. She talks about her ritual of waking up before the sun comes up and sitting in a room, and it was very important for her to be in that space just before the sun rises and be able to kind of make contact with a larger creative self in that moment. And again, amazing discipline. But probably one of my favorite authors that I spent time with was Bernadette Mayer, who is who's a new narrative, sort of more experimental poet, who was really invested in the everyday and the experience of women's experience of the everyday and of motherhood. And she almost turned that into a kind of form for herself, or a constraint, where she would have these poems that try to collect all the minutiae of the everyday in them. And they became almost a kind of performance art. And so I really enjoyed spending time with her, partly because I feel like she gave me a sense of permission to not completely separate the creative life from what I call the uncreative life, or the everyday life,
domestic, the
exactly,
normal,
and see
everyday, ordinary life. Yeah,
and see that there's a lot of inspiration in that everyday and domestic, although it can also be such a constraint as well. So
yeah.
I think that was another one of my favorites.
Okay, I love that. So I'd love to talk about this word genius, because I was connecting last week with a friend of mine who's a visual artist, and she teaches other visual artists, and she was showing me some paintings that her students had done, and this one student had done this. I think it was acrylic of a robin. The robin redbreast with like the fat little belly. And it was gorgeous, and I really like it. It just caught an ephemeral kind of moment of beauty, but like genius, I feel like genius is so loaded, and I don't know that anyone listening necessarily is like, oh yes, I must do my writing because I am such a genius,
Yeah.
I don't know that we come at it that way. So it feels like a really loaded word.
Yeah.
I definitely have known male writers who've taken on the mantle of genius, like watch me be in the canon and let me, piss on every woman I think is a threat to me, Definitely have seen that. But I don't see many women saying, oh, I must write because I am genius. Don't see it at all. What do you think about this very loaded word?
It's a loaded term, and it has a very long and interesting history as well. So I have it's interesting because I have a chapter in the book called Almost Genius, and this and this title for the chapter actually comes from a quote. There's the American author Kate Chopin, and one of her reviewers, the author of The Awakening, which is, was for many years on, and probably still is on everybody's syllabi in American literature classes. a reviewer said of her work, it amounts to something almost like genius, I think, or it amounts to almost genius.
Right.
And it was interesting.
Was it a male critic?
It was a male critic. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And couldn't just name it. And so, and then it's interesting. There's a lot of other writers who've had a really, even like someone like Simone de Beauvoir, who, second wave, mother of second wave feminism. She couldn't name women geniuses. She had a very hard time. She didn't really believe that there was female geniuses. She could name men. And then other
internalized patriarchy much, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And also, I think she also just found the term, she and others have found the term just kind of embarrassing, a little bit what you're saying, like that loaded.
A little cringe.
It's just a bit cringe. Exactly. Yeah. It's a little cringe. But interestingly, in the history, when you actually look at the history of the term, it wasn't always this kind of individuated term for we see it arising as a way to describe almost like talent, like someone has a genius for taking care of plants, or you have a genius for weaving. And then in the Romantic era, we see it become more about an individual person, where the sort of romantic poets claiming genius. And I argue in the book that we see this anxiety partly because we see in the 1800s women's prowess. We see women writers coming into the scene, and I think that threatened a lot of male writers. In fact, did threaten some of them. We actually have evidence of that. And so there was this sort of, okay, now I have to claim genius for myself and kind of push women out of that. And
elevate it to something that is really hard to achieve. Yeah.
Yes. And there's also this biological kind of history of this idea of genius, where in the Renaissance period, for example, they didn't believe that women could hold genius in their bodies because their bodies were too damp and and wet and cold.
Right. Yes.
And so in order to house genius, you needed to be like have this dry male body that would be able to like house the fire of genius, and women's bodies would just put it out because we're too damp and moist.
Oh my God,
so it's amazing what stories have come up with to kind of put women down. And so I agree that there is something a little cringe about calling just one person, naming one person genius, a genius. And so maybe the solution is to kind of go back to that earlier formulation where it's like you have a genius for something, right? And you can contain multitudes, and you're not just this one
excuse me.
One thing.
I'd love to talk in that context. I'd love to talk a little bit about like awards culture.
Oh yeah, right.
Because I think awards are always great when you're getting nominated for them, aren't they great? Like they're completely subjective until you're nominated, and then suddenly they're objective. They have determined that yes, I am making art, and I feel like there's something about, and in particular like genre work. So many of the genres have, their own awards, the Edgar Awards, Hugo Awards, and so on. But I often feel like folks who write in genre, so romance, I'll have women who love to read romance, write romance, tell me, and write, good romance, tell me how embarrassed they are to be writing romance because it's not real, and by real, they mean literature, and I hear that sometimes from folks who write in different genres, that you have the genre work that is more about entertainment, and then you have literature, which is the genius, and you can only be genius if you're writing literature. Can't be genius if you're writing genre. I think maybe that's broken down a little bit certainly for readers who read all kinds of things, but I don't know that it's broken down in terms of the canon, like Sherlock Holmes is in the canon, Agatha Christie's in the canon, right? But we don't tend to think of contemporary genre writers as holding this idea of genius. Did you see when you were investigating, because you looked at like Georgia O'Keeffe, you looked at visual artists, you looked at writers, did you see this kind of divide of, am I creating something worthy, come up?
It's interesting you say that, because I actually do have a little, it's not a long passage, but there's a passage on Agatha Christie, which it's interesting because of course those divisions are also commercial, also like totally. Monetary. So the genre authors made money, at least in the past. I think maybe it's uneven now and nobody's making money, but from literature, but definitely in the past. And then those who wrote fiction, literary fiction, did not, and still definitely do not make any money. So maybe there's those distinctions as well,
like the commercial and the literary. The
commercial and the
commercial
literary
isn't really seen as the purview of genius. Like, it's celebrated in popular culture, right? A book will come out, let's just take what's the one right now, Project Hail Mary, Andy Weir. Okay, guy. But like, if that wasn't a movie, it doesn't get the same kind of play.
I think at this exact moment in time, I actually think genre is having a big moment, and literary fiction is going the way of poetry in the case
don't say that. I'm a poet, and it's such an obscure little, well, you are too, right? I feel like I started in poetry, and so I kind of am very inured to, like, well, if no one, if only 5 people ever read this thing, it's fine, because that's what happens in poetry. But don't say that.
I think I had this conversation with a few friends who are poets and fiction writers, and I mean, these things change all the time, right? So it's just these kind of moments I teach as well. I'm a professor, and a lot of the students are wanting to write genre as well, which I'm fine with, as long as they're the attention to character and to interiority, and bringing in the aspects of, I guess, literary fiction into their work. I do think we're in a moment where again, this is like maybe a little depressing, but readerships are declining with the rise of self, and they have data on that as well. And so I kind of almost like a poet think like, well, if the book gets to 10 or 12 people, then it's found its readers. And another thing I'll say as well, just to kind of loop back to the awards. I just wish there were more kind of ways to celebrate work, so that it wasn't this sort of economy of scarcity, so that, because even if there's not even that much money attached to it, some kind of recognition does give you permission to write the next book often, right? Or it will give you that sense of like, yes, I belong here. And someone like myself who, and I'm sure many of the listeners too, would have experienced imposter syndrome for many years, and just didn't really feel comfortable in the art spaces, and didn't feel like I was taken seriously. When I got a little bit of recognition, it suddenly made me feel like, oh yeah, I deserve to give myself a bit more time to write, or like, this is important. And so I just wish there was a way to give more people that sense of permission, right? And I agree with you that the awards culture, it's just so subjective. It's it's pretty faulty system.
It's the system we have, I guess, but it's I'm always aware when in Canada it's sort of it's a fall thing, right? It's like October, November. And so I'm always aware, like when I had a friend who has a book out, and then the lists come out and they're not on the list, like you just kind of, it hurts a little bit.
I know.
Because, you have like a small number of books of the like 400 or 1,000 books published. Here are these 12 that are getting all the attention, and there were so many others. So let me put you on the spot and ask you, like, for women listening who maybe do struggle to give themselves permission. We're giving them permission right now. You and I, we're like, you have permission. If you need permission, you have it. But what are the things women need to put in place in their lives in order to be able to do the creative work that we're here to do?
Yeah, so this is a great question, and I feel like it's quite personal in many ways, because everyone has such different ways of accessing that creative force. Like Toni Morrison, waking up before dawn. I wish I could do that. I am not a morning person.
Yeah. I mean, I am a morning person, but not before dawn. No thanks.
Okay. In my case, like, how did I write my first book? I had many late nights, just kind of saying, okay, I'm gonna be groggy all at work tomorrow, but I've got the flair of something here. I've got the scent of something, and I'm just gonna stay up till 2 a.m. writing.
Wow.
And
Okay.
which is easier, I think, if you're if you don't have those other responsibilities, if you're not having to put kids to bed, or maybe you, even easier if you're single, you don't have spending time with a partner. But I do still allow myself, if I do feel, the drive for something, I'll stay up, even if it is not a responsible thing to do. I'll stay up and allow myself to follow that. I've also heard some authors have kind of rituals that allow them to clear the space, maybe give themselves that permission. So like lighting a candle, and making that space. I've in more recent years gone to one or two now writing retreats, Banff, and I feel like I didn't get a huge amount of writing done there, but it was wonderful to meet other writers, and that, I mean, honestly, that gave me a sense of like, oh yeah, I'm part of this community.
Right. It's a sense of identity, right? And
sense
we
of identity.
to do the things that are in line with our identity.
Yeah. And something I really still struggle with, but I think is so important, is the paying yourself first, which I'm sure everybody's familiar with. And it's so hard to do. It's so hard not for me to immediately answer students' emails in the morning, or do some kind of committee thing, or I don't know, like work. If it's a day that I have more like a flex day, where I could do, I could decide when to do which hours to use. And they say, like, you have to use the best hours on your own creative pursuit. And then I should be answering emails when my brain is like fried.
Right. Yeah.
I've
often thought that, when I would work in my day job, I was always getting pats on the head, right? Like I would do something and someone would go, that was good work.
Yeah.
Good work.
Yeah.
Good work. But like in the writing life, it's filled with doubt.
Yeah.
Am I doing the right thing? Am I getting this scene down correctly? Is this book ever going to be published? And then when you go and try to publish, whether you're trying to sell a short story to a lit mag or trying to get a book published, the world is just rejection. Yeah. So it is hard to maintain that spark of persistence.
Yeah, persistence, absolutely. And that I've heard from so many authors, prolific authors, that it's really above all else, it's that persistence. I should say, working as I'm an editor, I've been an editor at different literary magazines. Right now, I'm a fiction editor for The Fiddlehead. And when you're on that other side, you just realize that rejection is like so not personal, right? It's the most, there's like 800 submissions and you can choose 3.
Yes.
And when you see those numbers, you think, oh, okay. Yes. So it's nothing to do with your story.
Yeah, totally.
It's so that was,
remember. Yeah.
That was really important for me, because I would also, get rejected from a lit mag, and then just sort of, the story is terrible. Put it away.
I might as well
can't write.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so realizing that it's not at all personal. I even had a student a few weeks ago come in and said, I wrote my nonfiction essay and I hated it. I deleted it. And I know it's due today, but I couldn't even stand it that I actually deleted it. I was like, no, don't do that. If you always have some kind of draft, like a draft can always be improved. And so she ended up rewriting it, and it was a great essay. So I'm glad she had enough of it in her memory. But that was a kind of an extreme version of like that sort of internalized doubt and criticism to the point that you would delete a draft like that, the only draft. And so I think another thing that I think is really important too is like forming, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners do this already, but forming little groups, writing groups or share groups where you can just share some pages of what you've written with other people without, it doesn't need to be criticism or anything. It's just like, look, I did this.
I made this thing.
I made this thing. Yeah. And I think that's really important as well. But I totally agree with you. Being in an MFA program or being in a kind of work environment that you get little pats on the, there's a deadline, you make the deadline, you get a little pat on the back, without that structure, it's hugely, hugely challenging.
Totally. Yeah. Okay, so everyone, the book is Women Among Monuments, Solitude, Permission, and the Pursuit of Female Genius. I love that the word solitude is in that title. I believe that solitude is so, so important.
Agreed.
Thanks so much for being here, Kasia. I really enjoyed talking to you. Thanks so much.
This has been lovely. Thank you.
Thanks so much for hanging out with me today and for listening all the way to the end. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Resilient Writers Radio Show. While you're here, I would really appreciate it if you'd consider leaving a rating and review of the show. You can do that in whatever app you're using to listen to the show right now, and it just takes a few minutes. Your ratings and reviews tell the podcast algorithm gods that yes, this is a great show. Definitely recommend it to other writers. And that will help us reach new listeners who might need a boost in their writing lives today as well. So please take a moment and leave a review. I'd really appreciate it, and I promise to read every single one. Thank you so much.